Guys, the guest is on his way. Please settle down. Clap and stand up when she comes in. Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Ms. Sallyann Della Casa to IIM Kozhikode. I request our respected Director, Sir, and Ms. Sallyann Della Casa to please take their seats on the dais. I extend you a warm welcome on behalf of our Director, Professor Debashish Chatterjee, and all the students of the postgraduate program of this institution. I request you to accept a small bouquet as a token of our love and gratitude. As is customary tradition, I now request both our Professor and Ms. Sallyann to start the function by lighting a lamp. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce this amazing woman who modestly calls herself as work under construction, but has helped more than 20,000 youngsters to realize their potential and awaken the leaders in themselves. Ms. Sallyann Della Casa is a graduate from Harvard University, where she majored in human resources and organizational behavior. She is a super manager who pursued 3 degrees at the same time in political science, Italian, and French after graduating from high school. She also holds a degree in law from the St. Thomas University School of Law and had a successful career of 15 years as a lawyer when she opened her own law firm in Florida at the age of 21. She spent most of her years at the law firm in Florida helping out the U.S. government life skills program, CAPAO, and felt that the need of material was to connect with the kids. This is when she started devising her own programs. Her teaching ideas were later incorporated into the curriculum for all the teachers to use, and Della Casa was named Volunteer of the Year 7 years in a row. In 2010, Ms. Della Casa set up the Growing Leaders Foundation to take the curricula she had written and roll them out on a global scale, starting with schools in Trinidad and Tobago. She helps humans beat the influence of machines and robots in our lives and makes us more human. She does all of this with her app GLIAC that uses neuro and data science, plus AI and machine learning algorithms and micro-learning to measure and shape up your soft skills. But all that I say will just sound flat in front of Ms. Sallyann's vibrant personality. I would now like to invite her onto the stage and help us truly discover ourselves.
No, you can keep it, just let me know when you're ready. And do you have the presentations and like beginning? Do you have a map to walk around?
Yeah. There's a column map that I can set up here.
when we get to the end of it, just give
Okay.
we're not gonna see how after.
Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Am I louder? Excellent. So I'm going to start off by telling you something about me that's going to get everyone very excited in the room, probably the males. I'm originally from the West Indies. Don't ask me about cricket. I have never seen a cricket match ever. But I'm very famous in Dubai, where we have a lot of people from Kerala there, and whenever I say I'm from the West Indies, they go, Brian Lara. So let's start. I'm going to do this talk with you with a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. And we're kind of going to do it like a rap song. So it's going to not be on the same tone. And we're going to chop it up with some questions in between. So we're not going to wait all the way to the end for you to like hold your questions. We're going to, beginning, have some questions because your brains are going to spark. It's going to do a little bzzz, and you're going to ask me some questions. And then in the middle, and then also the end. So we're going to start with, the whole umbrella of this talk is about identity. And I know many of you are first years here, right? How many of you are wondering, what the heck am I doing here? Raise your hand. I know the feeling. I know the feeling. But I promise you, by the time I'm done, like some light bulbs are going to go off. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad light bulbs, but some light bulbs are going to go off. Okay? So, identity and becoming more human. I think all of us have in our minds some version of play like this. Well, maybe you guys are very young, so your version is like Minecraft with your friend or some other digital version, but we all have this version of ourselves where there were like no filters. Like joy felt like joy, right? Anger was like anger. And it's really interesting that we lose so much of that. And how does it happen? And what got us to where we are? I'm going to show you with a little story how bad it is. How many women do we have in the room? Do we have a lot of women in the room? Okay. I just wanted to check. So listen to the story. If any of you have heard the story before and you shout out the answer, I don't have paper, but if I had paper, I'd throw it at you. Do not shout out the answer if you know the answer, okay? So let's start. There was a young boy, listen carefully. He was involved in a horrific accident. He is rushed to the emergency room. He's about to die. But the emergency room is packed. He's off to the corner. There's this absolute chaos that day in the emergency room. Doctors everywhere. Nobody knows what's going on. However, in walks the head surgeon, takes control of the room, goes to the boy, calls everyone, starts giving instructions. But the head surgeon looks at the little boy and gasps and says, I cannot operate on this boy, for he is my son, but I am not his father. Who is the head surgeon? Do not scream it out. Why are no female hands up? You. The mother. How many of you honestly missed that completely? Come on, put your hand, don't be shy. You just missed it completely. Girls, how many of you missed that completely? Yeah. So I've told that story, you know, at the Economic Forum, Important Women, and very few women, or men, actually get that. And the reason why I share that story to start with is to start off with how thick is the filter of how we approach ourselves and the world. I mean, clearly, a boy has a mother and a father, but we heard words like take control, leadership, and somehow we completely lost any sense of, well, it could be a female. And the same happens for boys. So I'm going to get to that shortly, but I wanted to start there. When we talk about identity, everything you approach, and I don't care how many of you think that I am the most level-headed person, and I am, you know, you approach it with a filter. And a filter is like a baggage of all of your experiences and everything life. You kind of come in there and you put on these glasses and you see the world completely different from everyone else. So I want you to keep that in your mind as we're going through today. So here's what the talk is going to look like. It's the Becoming More Human journey. The first part of the talk, we're going to talk about challenging your assumptions. So we're going to prime you a little bit. We're going to the second part of the talk, and we're going to talk about robot-proofing our future, which is really going to get into technology and AI and robots taking our jobs and all kinds of, someone's shaking his head going, no, robot's not going to take my job. I like him. I like him. And then the third part, we're going to end with identity. So let's get started. How many of you feel, you know that infamous box, how many of you actually feel that your whole life is this box? And by a box, I mean everybody else's expectations of who you should be. Oh, the more hands went up, half of the whole room went up. So that's what the box is. So the box is everybody else's expectations of who you should be. Many of you are here sitting in this room because of a box, because somebody said you needed to come here. Is that true? And the sides of the box, when did they start? So it's really interesting. So the first side of the box starts when we're like little kids. And you remember like all of that joyful stuff that we just saw playing on the swings, and at some point, a parent unwillingly might say, you're a girl, you can't jump off the swing that way. Or, you shouldn't be playing with the boys outside. And the first side of the box comes up from our parents, very innocently, telling us yes and no of how the world should be and look like. And that's where the first side, and as I said, not purposefully in a bad way, but remember, they have their own baggage and filters also. Where do you think the second side of the box comes from? Friends. What else? The biggest box maker in the world are schools. Why do you agree with me? How many of you know in your heart you're more than just an exam result? Raise your hand. Yet, we live in a world that says that's what you are, through an education system. And we live in a world where a resume says, this is who you are professionally. So that's, I'm not even going to say education is one side of the box. Let's give education like 2 or 3 sides of the box, right? The third side would be what you said, your friends. So you become a teenager, you become a young adult, and you get very influenced by your friends, by your peers, you're still young, but very soon you'll also all get married and have other families and other people telling you who you are. And that's literally how our identity starts getting, I don't want to use the word crushed, but it starts getting suffocated. I like the word suffocated, right? And every once in a while, we kind of lift the cover off it, and we go, I'm an out-of-the-box thinker, right? And we kind of wave to the world, but we go back in the box of everybody's expectation. How many of you feel like that? Either we're in or we're not in. Like, this half thing doesn't work. We're in or we're not in. Yeah. I felt like that too. I became a lawyer at 21. And I became a lawyer, and I am not by any means the right person to be a lawyer. I hug trees. So you can imagine me in a courtroom. But I became a lawyer because my parents wanted me to be a politician. And my aunt was the first president of my country, and I was being kind of geared towards that, and I'm not that person. But I went and got a law degree, and you know what? I did well because I studied a lot. So I'm a hard worker, so on the outside, people would look and go, but you do really well at that. But if you're a hard worker, it doesn't matter. You're going to do well anyway. You're just not doing it for the reasons you should be. So keep that in your brain also as we're talking. Circle of influence. How many of you are unhappy where you're standing right now in your life? Like, you're just not where, you know you're not where you should be. So, the 5 people you spend the most time with, think about that. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? They are your circle of influence and probably very comfortable with you where you are. And probably that's why you're there. And they could be people that love you and care for you and mean well. But if you want to actually change anything about yourself and your identity, the people that will fight you on it the most are those 5 people. Because what happens is, as humans, immediately when we meet each other, we put each other up on different spaces on a shelf. So I know she belongs in this corner. So I know every time I approach you, you're in that corner. The minute you start moving from that corner, it's impacting me. I am not happy about that. Do you see how it works? So if you are not happy where you're standing right now, I am not telling you to get rid of all of your friends. I'm not telling you to get rid of your family, but you're going to have to start injecting other circle of influences, because you are standing exactly where you are right now by choice. Divergence is bad. That's another one that's holding us back. Who knows what divergence means? Anyone? It doesn't matter if you don't, but does anyone know? Yes? Yeah. So how many of you started on one path and then you jumped over into another path, or you're interested in something else, and everyone's like, what are you doing? The entire room. Right? So, you know, as I said to you, the first part of the talk is challenging assumptions, and I'm just throwing stuff out there at your brain to see what you will do with it. This is another one of them. So back when our parents went to school, I mean, I'm older than you guys, but I'm very young looking. Not that much. Back when our parents went to school, you would graduate, and that degree you had would give you a career of 30 or 40 years, right? I mean, many of us have parents or grandparents who are like, that's what I did. Today, we're lucky if when we graduate, our degree has value. Depending on what you're studying. Some things are moving so fast. If you're in AI, if you're in, there are certain things that are just moving, especially cognitive science, neuroscience. I mean, it's just moving so fast. Divergence is something that's very attractive in the world that we live in today. So I want you to keep that also in your mind. There's something called a T personality in design thinking. And design thinking is a process, if you're not familiar with it, that is used a lot of times by people who innovate. And all it means is you have two really strong abilities in completely dissimilar fields. And those are actually the most attractive individuals to be hired today, because your filter by which you approach things are entirely different from someone who all they did was engineering, or all they did was accounting. So, not that I'm encouraging you to jump around, but many of us have completely different areas we're brilliant at. And sometimes we choose to forget about one, but sometimes it's that other one that might give texture, right? And give some legs and depth. So keep that in mind in terms of the world that we live in. This is one of my divergence matters. I have a foundation in the Caribbean, and I teach kids, soft skills, youth jails, at-risk kids. I would have never in a million years thought I could actually do this for a living. Apparently, I'm really creative. I only found that out when I turned 29. Like, it took that long. And it's what brings my corporate law, that I practiced 8 years from the time I was 21, brings an interesting texture to when I do my foundation work. Because when I do foundation work and people hear you have a foundation, they actually think, well, you don't know anything corporate. Whereas I can go into any large corporation and I can draft their governance for them. You know, so it brings a really interesting texture to the type of work I get to do because of the law, even though I hated it, right? So keep that in mind. So the bias against men. I want you guys to read this. What if men were not told as boys, you have to provide for a family one day. Hold back those tears and be strong. That's not a job for guys. What if you were told that? Who would you become? Have you ever thought of that? That the real bias is not against women, but men? Who agrees with me? Raise their hand. Even the women are agreeing with me. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, guys. Right? If you had a clean slate without that baggage, who would you become? Would any of you willing to tell me? Or you're too nervous? Nervous? It's okay. I am not creative. How many of you think you're not creative in this room? Raise your hand. Are you kidding me? So there's a famous NASA study conducted by George Land. I kind of just gave you some of the graphs, but you know, we can summarize it in this way. Under the age of 5, over 600,000 kids were measured on creativity, and 98% are creative. We are all born. You remember those swings? I remember when, like, I don't know if you guys, maybe you guys didn't have like toy soldiers and your imagination goes wild, and did anybody have like imaginary friends or anything like that? No? Yeah, some of you. See? See? The creativity is off the charts when you're young. And then when you get to the age of 10, look where it drops. 32%. How sad is that? And then you get to 15, which is the teenage years. So think about the box when I'm going through this of everybody else's expectations. So by 10, you've got a good 6 years, 5 years of education, 3 sides. By 15, got the peer and the friends. And then an adult, which would be around 24, 25. How many of you are 24 or 25 in here? 2%, guys. 2%. And it's a learned behavior. So the 98% is still there. It's a learned behavior. I'm getting an echo. I'm not sure. Are you guys hearing an echo or no? Okay, that's fine. Maybe it's just me. So, in talking about identity, remember I said to you there's a start, a middle, and an end. You can't really talk about your identity unless you start poking holes at all of your assumptions. So the assumptions, I'm not really creative. Oh, I'm a guy, I can't do that. These are all the assumptions that stops us from even going to the ledge and peeking over and going, I wonder what's over there. And pretty much, you get to college or master's or law school, and your act of becoming, it's like all your wings are clipped and they're telling you to fly. How many of you feel like that? That your wings are clipped, but you're being expected to fly? So what are you going to do about it? And here, we're going to have our first cut, and I'm taking 5 minutes of questions. Who has a question? Yes, I have one over there. Don't be shy with me, huh? There is no dumb question with me. Ask anything you want.
Hi, ma'am. I am Vamshi.
Hold on. Do I look like a ma'am? Come on.
My question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is that in this 21st century, we are expected to behave, act, and think in a certain process. So, are we not killing the talent by forcing someone to be like that?
Okay,
that's my question. And
okay.
Adding
one question at a time. Who is expecting you? You said we are expected. By who?
Like soft skills. Like we are expected to behave in a certain way, in a certain...
By who?
By the society, by the professionals and all.
Okay.
Like, for example, office etiquettes. We are expected to behave in a certain way in the office. In the process, what I mean to say is that we are killing our emotions and becoming more robotic in the process. So my question is that how to behave like more human, how to at the same time imbibing the soft skills in the humanity. That's my question. So the second part of the talk is about your soft skills and becoming not human. But it starts, and the reason I asked you by who is many of us, we don't actually realize that the only person we're reporting to is ourselves. How you show up in the world, you get to decide that. I'm not saying that, you're going to go into an office and, wear shorts and tank tops and, there's certain basic etiquette, but how you show up in the world is dependent on you. So if you decide that you're showing up in the world and leaving parts of your identity out the door, that's a choice you've made. And if you don't take responsibility for that, you can't blame, that's very generic to go, society says, the rule says. Did they make you?
That's a yes or no question. Did they? Right? When we're not sure who we are, that's when we look for other people to define for us who we should be. When you have a strong sense of who you are and how you show up, some people are going to really like you and some people are not. And you know what? That's okay. You cannot, when you're everything to everyone, you're nothing to no one. So that's where you get into that trap of, I'm doing it because society says. And we will talk about the soft skills and the robots. That's actually our second part, where we're going to go into that a lot. Any other questions? Yes. Yes, yes.
Hi, my
Yes.
name is Shanika, and my question is
Hello,
that,
Shardika.
and my question is that we talked that 98% of creativity is still there in us, and
Absolutely.
we are living with certain assumptions right now.
Yes.
So how do we comprehend that? What are the assumptions and what is the actual reality? Because we have been living in a circle, and if you ask me right now what I'm assuming about myself, I will not be able to answer that. So how do we go about that process?
So let me give you a simple one on creativity. It's a really simple question I ask you guys. Think about it, what is something that you have done for the very first time ever, and don't tell me, oh, I came to your talk. Like, that is not going to cut it. What is something you have done for the first time ever in the last 7 days? For the first time ever. Yes, the gentleman at the back. I can't hear you. Can we, do we have a mic for him? Or maybe you come up front and maybe down here.
So about 2-3 days back, I was standing there, and I addressed a crowd of 450 people for the first time in my life.
And you spoke to a crowd of 450?
Yeah, the same batch.
Excellent. Anyone else who's done something for the first time ever in the last 7 days?
I played pool a few days back for the first time.
Were you good?
No.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Anybody else?
Hi.
Guys,
I
yes.
played poker for the first time today.
Okay. You do realize how many of you are in the room? Over 100 of you? Oh my goodness. 3 of you? 3 of you have done something outside of just being on repeats in your life. Do you understand now why creative? You're just like this. Every morning I eat this kind of cereal, robot. And then I go to this class and I take this route. Oh, and there I'm going to wear my red shirt. Let me smell it. Okay, yeah, I can wear it. Right? So there are hacks on many things. Clearly, you have to do some self-reflection evaluation, which I'll show you how, to pick up on some of your biases and assumptions. But the one on creativity is a really simple one. I remember maybe about 6 years ago, I scheduled in, when I left law, so it was 7 years ago I left law, I would schedule in, just like I would eat lunch, to do something new that I'd never done before, every week for an entire year. It could be as simple as having a coffee with someone you have nothing in common with. You're like, why would I even talk to this person? But what it does is all of these start stimulating different parts of your brain, your heart, your soul, and pretty soon, over a period of time, your filter starts getting foggy, or maybe thicker, but it starts shifting. So that's a really simple one, but they're hacks. Okay? And your existing 5 friends will not be able to identify for you, more than likely, what your filters are, because they're very comfortable with them. So sometimes you might have to go outside of that for someone to actually tell you the truth of who you are, right? One more question and then we have to continue. Yes.
Hi, I'm Neeraj. So right now you talked about creativity. So like passion is something people often relate with creativity only. Like people when they are creative, they tend to keep it as a passion.
Okay,
And
who is people?
in general, or let's say me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now we're making progress. Okay.
So, and we have often heard, like in talks and everywhere, that whatever you do in your life, do it passionately, or you should do something that is your passion only.
I
But
disagree.
exactly, my question is that only. But most of the times, or maybe like for me, I want to keep my passion and my profession a very different thing, because I think when I intermingle both of these, I lose my passion in some or the other ways.
Okay.
So how do I go about that?
So let me explain. Really good question. So anybody who tells you, follow your passions, that's what you should do in life, don't ever listen to them. Because the reality is if you don't have a strength or power in what you have a passion in, you will never make a living doing it, and you end up killing the passion, right? And here's what a power is. You know, I'll describe to you, we're not in a classroom. If we were, I would have had you guys doing activities. So if I were to mind map, you guys know what a mind map is, right? So if you were to mind map your power and your passion, here's how I define a power. A power is something that comes natural to you. A power is something, if I were to say right now, I'm going to give you $100 to teach me something, that's what you're going to teach me. It is not limited by what you have experience in or your degree. Most of us limit our power by our degrees and our experiences. So that's the power. Passion is something that you do that when you do it, you lose track of time. Passion is something that generally we do as hobbies, because we think like, so for me, I've been teaching since I was 12 years old as a passion. I mean, people were just like, can't she just stay quiet? Like, you know, but that was my passion. Anything, I'm a nerd. I would read 5 books and then I want to teach it, right? So passion is something that you will do it even if you made no money doing it. And passion has a really unique thing to it. Passion actually feels good. There's a feeling attached. So what you were talking about in terms of keeping your profession separate from your passion is a little bit different from power and passion. Are you guys familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Yes. Right. Good. Very good. All right. So at the very bottom of Maslow, just envision I have Maslow's hierarchy of needs right here, and then we're going to continue the lecture because we got sidetracked by this gentleman over here. So at the very bottom, that's where a job is. So a job is something that you do as a responsible adult to earn a living. About, I don't know, maybe 99% of us, or maybe a little less, but most of us go through our lives having a job. And what a job means is if you give me more money to do something with the same or similar type of thing, I'll go to the other place. So you can have a job, that's how I earn money as a responsible adult, but that has nothing to do with the other 2 layers. The one in the middle is actually a very dangerous one that many of you in this room might fall into. It's called a career. So this space of, and then here's the thing about a job. A job, you leave it at 5, so you have a lot of free time because you leave it there, right? Do other things, follow the passion maybe. A career is one of those things you take it, some of it home in the evenings, you work on it on weekends, but like deep inside of you, you're like, this is not it. Like I'm doing this and I know it might lead to something, but you can just feel it. That's how I felt with law. Like I knew it in my heart, but it looked so shiny to everyone else on the outside, right? It looked so shiny. So again, your hierarchy of needs, bottom, job, middle, career. I don't think that's what you were talking about. You were talking about a job. The very top is where we have self-actualization and transcendence, which is your calling. So I'm in my calling right now. Every time I get up to speak or teach, I can't even explain it to you. It just feels like I fall into myself. And very few of us have, I don't want to say the courage to pursue that, but very few of us sometimes have the opportunity to be able to, because many times we can't make our living with our calling. So that's something I want you, to consider. And for you guys, very clearly, I'm doing this and this is a job and I'm going to pursue the passion calling thing on the side, and nothing's wrong with that. Or I can actually make a living, like I make a living now in my calling, and that's just the space I operate out of. Make sense? Let's continue the talk. I need to figure out how to get my slides to the second set. How am I on time? Okay, I have to move fast. Yeah, hold on, let me see. Yeah, this one here. So this is where we're going to get into robots taking our jobs. How many of you are genuinely concerned that a robot is going to take your job? Do you even have a job? You're concerned and you don't have a job. I mean, yeah. Okay. So this is an area that I'm heavily involved in, other than my foundation work. And what we keep hearing about, some of you might know what it is and you don't know what it is, and it's perfectly fine. It's artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence is the term, kind of like the umbrella term everybody uses, and they don't really know what all the parts of it is. But basically, you go in a layer and you have machine learning, and you go in a layer and you have deep learning, and really all it is that we're teaching machines to think like humans. And it just so happens the machines can do it better than us in some things. In some things. I mean, that's my artificial intelligence lesson 101. And all of us in this room, we are no longer identities. We're some part of an algorithm. And that's kind of scary. Or is it? Who says it's scary? Who says it's not? Okay, half of you don't even have you don't even know. Half of you don't even know. I would like to show for you this video. Are you guys familiar with Bridgewater? Bridgewater is the #1 hedge fund in the world. Are you familiar with Bridgewater? Okay, there was a display. Why is it not showing up? It just, yeah, this is the Bridgewater one. I don't know why it's not showing up. It was on there. But it's okay, we can go on YouTube and find it. Okay. It's Bridgewater. 1 second, not that one. Breathe. Okay, there at 8.25 minutes is what I'm going to. Just playing 2 minutes. Yeah.
Autocracy.
You can leave it from there.
So for the last 25 years, that's how we've been operating. We've been operating with this radical transparency and then collecting these principles, largely from making mistakes, and then embedding those principles into algorithms. And then those algorithms we're following the algorithms in parallel with our thinking. That has been how we've run the investment business, and it's how we also deal with the people management. In order to give you a glimmer into what this looks like, I'd like to take you into a meeting and introduce you to a tool of ours called the dot collector that helps us do this. A week after the U.S. election, our research team held a meeting to discuss what a Trump presidency would mean for the U.S. economy. Naturally, people had different opinions on the matter and how we were approaching the discussion. The dot collector collects these views. It has a list of a few dozen attributes, so whenever somebody thinks something about another person's thinking, it's easy for them to convey their assessment. They simply note the attribute and provide a rating from 1 to 10. For example, as the meeting began, a researcher named Jen rated me a 3, in other words, badly, for not showing a good balance of open-mindedness and assertiveness. As the meeting transpired, Jen's assessments of people added up like this. Others in the room have different opinions. That's normal. Different people are always going to have different opinions. And who knows who's right? Let's look at just what people thought about how I was doing. Some people thought I did well, others poorly. With each of these views, we can explore the thinking behind the numbers. Here's what Jen and Larry said. Note that everyone gets to express their thinking, including their critical thinking, regardless of their position in the company. Jen, who's 24 years old and right out of college, can tell me, the CEO, that I'm approaching things terribly. This tool helps people both express their opinions and then separate themselves from their opinions to see things from a higher level. When Jen and others shift their attentions from inputting their own opinions to looking down on the whole screen, their perspective changes. They see their own opinions as just one of many and naturally start asking themselves, how do I know my opinion is right? That shift in perspective is like going from seeing in one dimension to seeing in multiple dimensions. And it shifts the conversation from arguing over our opinions to figuring out objective criteria for determining which opinions are best. Behind the dot collector is a computer that is watching. It watches what all these people are thinking, and it...
How many of you think that's really scary? How many of you like that? Wow. So what if that is how your classroom operated? Why am I even showing you that? That's actually where the workforce is heading. And those of you who were afraid of, I think you asked, how do we become more human? This is where it matters. So this has been on my mind for the last 7 years for the foundation. And I decided to do something about it. Hold on. And I went to Harvard and created a patent-pending algorithm on measuring soft skills. So how do you know if you're improving on leadership? How do you know if you're really improving on critical thinking? How do you really know you're improving? And it's called Gleek. I know everybody pronounces it wrong, but it's like geek, but with an L, Gleek. And what it does is I spent a lot of time with a team developing some neuroscience and behavioral science tests. So I can run a test on every single one of you in like 10 minutes, and I can actually pick up with like 99% accuracy what all your gaps are in your soft skills. And then I can actually do a learning pathway for you in micro-learning every day, shoot you stuff on a chatbot or on your phone. And I have AI that looks at your quality of thought, so there's no ABC answer, and I can actually see if your filter is changing or not on how you're approaching stuff. I'm not the only one doing this stuff. I flew in here this morning. I was in, I hope I pronounced this correct, Gurgaon, for the HR Tech Fair yesterday.
This is this is what you guys are going to be facing when you go out into the workplace. This is the kind of technology. One of the projects that I recently did for the UAE government, and this is just to tell you how now governments are thinking and companies are thinking. So the UAE government, KHDA came to me and said, can you run it on 69,000 teachers and tell us what are the attributes that will make a good school versus an outstanding school? And we're all data. Like, we all have patterns. We all think we're so unique. Well, we're not. And this kind of, when you look at this, you would go, well, yes, teachers are supposed to be altruistic. And yeah, their desire to lead seems to be a little low. You look at it. But then when you compare it to the outstanding schools, what you will see is what's making the difference. So outstanding school teachers tend to be novelty seeking, which means they're very curious and always looking for something different for their students. They're looking for they're very low on altruism. You can't give what you don't have. If you're too altruistic, a lot of times you don't fill yourself back up. And that apparently, emotional distance also is another one we noticed. And look at ambition between outstanding, and the patterns are, this is 69,000 teachers, and the patterns are right there. All of you in this room, I can actually map all of you within 10 minutes and tell you what is the pattern of the whole first year of all of you. Yes, it's there. Here are some other types of solutions, and this is to give you guys an idea, because you guys are all going to go out in the workforce, of some of the things that is being done now. So by the time you graduate in the next year or two, I mean, this stuff is, accelerating exponentially. I mean, it's fast. So we have Accor Hotels. That's another one of our clients that use Gleek. Accor owns like Swiss hotels. They're very big all over the world. I think they have hotels here in India. They came to us and they had no women in their C-suite positions. So no women in any C-level, CEO, CFO, GMs. So no longer are they developing just, okay, I'm going to do a regular learning and development program. They actually had us come and we actually engineered for them what it is women in C-suite